So welcome to our webinar today. It's Introduction to AAC in the Classroom, and it's presented by our speech language pathologist, Felicia Selan.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. So we're going to be diving into a little introduction about AAC and how it can be used in the classroom. We're going to be talking about what exactly AAC is. We're going to identify populations who may use AAC. We will identify the various types of AAC, and then you'll be able to understand the ways in which the AAC can be implemented within the classroom. So most AAC is a term that a lot of people have heard, but may not understand the breakdown of it. So AAC is called Augmentative Alternative Communication. That's what the abbreviation stands for. And this means that this is all forms of communication used besides oral speech. So these would be things like gestures, symbols, pictures, writing. Those are all fall in that category of what AAC is. If we break apart the wording in this, the word augmentative means to add to someone's speech when we're talking about this, and alternative can be used instead of speech. So these can be broken apart as something that's added to help someone that has speech, or it can be used completely instead of oral speech. So this can be used permanently or temporary. So for example, if someone that may use this permanently is someone that may have CP or cerebral palsy, they may have to use some sort of AAC from when they were young until, for their entire lifespan. For a temporary use of AAC, this could be something more of the rehabilitation form. So when someone has a traumatic brain injury from a car accident and maybe in rehab, this is a form that could only be used temporary. So just because someone is using AAC, it may not be forever. So this kind of talks about populations and just, in general that may use AAC. So those who are unable to use verbal speech, as I mentioned before, and then individuals whose speech is extremely difficult to understand. So those who are unable to use verbal speech, I know many of us have worked with non-speaking children who have been diagnosed with autism. They may not use any form of verbal communication. They may use sounds, but there's not the verbal communication there exchange. However, they're able to use, a certain form of AAC, which will go into the types. And then an individual whose speech is extremely difficult to understand. This may be someone who's diagnosed with apraxia of speech. So their speech is completely unintelligible and they just need an aid to like a device or a little aid to help them, get their message across. So some examples of individuals who may use AAC, those who have congenital impairments, as mentioned before, so like CP, intellectual impairments, and then those who have acquired conditions like Parkinson's or ALS. So they may get that later in life and have to have some sort of device to help them communicate. So this is where we'll talk about the types of AAC. So it's broken into different categories. The first one is the unaided AAC. So it's unaided, is self-explanatory. These do not require any tools or materials. So if you're using unaided AAC, those can be, any of your gestures, your facial expressions, even American Sign Language. So this is not using any form of tactile, any aid, no technology whatsoever. Then you have the aided group. So this is where this is a system where some type of physical object or device is used. So examples here that many of us have seen, worked with, even created ourselves: symbols, pictures, communication boards, communication binders, and then you've worked with some devices, which we'll talk about in the next few slides. So I know in the classroom, a lot of visuals are used, which is great. So those are tactile, as well as, those would be the symbols, pictures, communication boards. And then these this aided group is divided into 3 categories depending on the level. So there's low tech, mid tech, and high tech. When we're talking about the low tech aided AAC, it also is in the name, low tech. It does not require any technology. This would be the printed material, so it's not battery powered. So again, a communication board, a picture exchange system on a binder, Velcro. This is not battery powered. Then you have mid tech. So this is not a complex device. It's a static display. However, it does provide a voice message when a symbol is pressed. So it is battery, usually battery operated. And then you have high tech, which has become more popular nowadays. So this is where you've seen as something called a speech generating device. And this is completely electronic, which would be your tablet or computer that has a specific app in order, depending on what communication app they're using. So some low-tech examples would be what I mentioned before, the picture exchange communication system. This is PEX. You have the communication board and visual schedules. Usually these are the Velcro with, you've used Boardmaker maybe in the past to create some of these, or lesson pics for the visuals in your classroom. Mid-tech examples, Big Mac. I'm not talking about anything from McDonald's. This is a large button. It is battery operated, and you can push it. You can record different words. So if a child can even record on it, or an adult, and they push it and it speaks. It has the speech sound come back out. So if child needs help, they have it sitting on their desk. They can push it. It says help. The Go Talk as well, and then it's similar, and then the Quick Talker. So these are battery powered. However, it is not that full on high tech yet. We're not into a computer system. That's where we're talking about tablets. So a lot of kiddos in the classrooms, they insurance will pay for a tablet, and then there is also a program that can be downloaded. So Proloquo, LAMP, Words for Life, Touch Chat. You can Google an array of communication programs that can be downloaded onto this specific tablet, just in the App Store, depending on, what works best for that child or adult. And then there's also computers. There's something called an eye gaze device. I'm not sure if anybody has ever seen anyone use this, but it's actually the child or adult will move if their eyes move, it's programmed to a large tablet or computer screen in front of them, and they're able to communicate that way. It's really, really neat. And then there's something called a Megabee assisted communication and writing tablet. This is also helping more so with writing. So those were the groups of or the different types of AAC and how they're broken down, and just a little bit more about those. So what are the benefits of using AAC? This gives a voice to everyone. So it helps establish a means of independence for that user. You want the child or adult to feel that they're being heard. This supports development of language skills and comprehension. So they're able to, participate and then learn new vocabulary as well. This supports and promotes social skills. So when the child is, can socialize with their group of peers, they can use their device, they can use, whatever form is that they're most comfortable with. So it gives them a sense of, inclusion. And they feel that they're being heard, even if they're not verbal, you can't hear their speech, they're using their device to talk. And this helps to increase opportunity for community involvement and employment. I've seen, some people in public using, even employees use a tablet. So I'm not sure if anybody else has, but it gives, this is a sense of independence and helps them feel, okay, I can go out into the real world and still use my device and be heard. So some examples of how different types of AAC can be used in the classroom. I know that sometimes when I'm talking with teachers, paraprofessionals, any school staff, sometimes They have questions as to how can they implement this in a lesson or in everyday, in their everyday curriculum. Because if the student is just sitting in the back pushing one button repeatedly and there's no purpose for it, no one's getting anything out of that. The child's not being heard. The teacher doesn't have the training to include that student and how to use their device. So providing that technical assistance and that the training on how that they can implement this in their curriculum is great. So for example, arrival and departure, you can use single words or phrases to greet each other. If a student has a tablet, go model for the student on the greetings page, hello Johnny, how are you? And then they're able to either repeat that, ask the same question. You can say ask a peer if you're the teacher. You can kind of include them in that arrival and departure. Use words and phrases to request actions and answers. So if they have to ask can you help me put my backpack away? So there's certain activities that you can include them in. A literature activity, there's certain words called core words when we're talking about AAC. So words that are repeated and used most often: open, turn, all done, close. When a student's requesting a book, even if it's circle time for a younger group of students, you could ask them, say turn the page, model it on their device for them so that they're able to repeat, or they're able to, or say, Johnny, what do we do next? And he's able to, sequence, turn the page. So you can include them in these activities. A student can use an eye gaze to identify common vocabulary. If you're in, reading and talking about a farm and they have their farm page up on their device, they could gaze over and label the common animals. A teacher can model those core words throughout the story and then again expand by using that during the activity, not just sitting in the back without being included. In math, you can use devices to solve the math problems and discuss strategies for solving like certain word problems. If there's words such as same, different, more, less, students can use those, find, say in math, go on a scavenger hunt and, find things that are the same or different, short and long, and then, use their device or use a communication board and ask the student, what did you find? And they're able to find that vocabulary. And lunch, again, this is a huge time to use a device or a communication board, using those core words like more, want, all done, eat, drink. The student can voice their output to order their lunch. They can, if they, use a symbol, they could say, you make a communication board, I want French fries, or I don't want hamburger. They can, put those phrases together to feel that independence, bring it up to the lunch in the cafeteria in the lunch line and have them request what they want instead of just handing them and assuming that they want, something. It does take a little bit more time, but this will, this gives them that opportunity to feel that, again, inclusion and independence. The students can use those picture symbols on a lunchbox or a lunch tray again to reject those items that they don't want. Make a comment. Ooh, I like it. It's sticky. It smells bad, whatever it may be. And recess, this is another great time to use AAC, physical education. It has a lot of those action, those verbs. You can say jump, run, you can request help. You could work on turn taking, my turn, your turn. Again, using those speech generating devices to participate in games such as Simon Says. So they're able to kind of be Simon, and maybe they can say touch eyes. Simon Says touch nose, and they can kind of be a leader in that activity. In art, this is another great activity. There's a lot of tabs on these speech generating devices, or in a binder. If it's organized, they can use those communication boards. If it's like a color page or a paint page, they can request all the color markers or crayons that they want to use in their art project. So all in all, exposure is key for this. So for a student or even an adult to learn, this. So students learn how to use AAC through exposure and modeling from their communication partner. Who is the communication partner? It's you. You have to have another person on the reciprocal end to have a communication exchange. So you have to make sure as a teacher, a paraprofessional, model, model, model. So that's why that technical assistance or training from a speech pathologist. We can go over if you have questions about Prolo Quota Go, this app, ask away, and we can model how to implement this. So modeling involves pointing to or activating a symbol on the AAC system as we speak so that students can experience and use their AAC system to communicate effectively. So this helps students learn their AAC system faster. It shows that the AAC system is a valid and valued communication method. It helps us slow down our speech and use language at the student's level. This is very important. You want to make sure that you are modeling simple language. So that's why using, instead of saying, I want more strawberries on my plate, using a phrase like that a student may not be at that level to formulate those phrases or understand, the length of that. So you could say, want strawberries or want more. So you're simplifying their wants and needs to their level. And then slow down our speech instead of saying, okay, go to page 2. Go to table 1, go over to colors. You have to break it down to their level. And then it adds a visual versus relying on that auditory processing. So instead of just explaining, I know that I'm, a kinesthetic learner. I like the auditory, the visual, the hands-on. I need all of it instead of, just explaining it verbally. The strategies for implementation, you want to use aided language input. So this is a way that you could, the communicator can provide a model for that communication with the use of AAC. You want to use least to most prompting. So begin with those less invasive prompts, like using gestures, to the more invasive, like physical, such as hand over hand, or hand under hand, which we've heard of. Use visual aids, so include pictures, 3D objects when you're, even if it's tactile things. Offer 2 choices. So in order to implement this in, again, like if it's snack time or if it's free time in the classroom, and you say, okay, Johnny, do you want computer or iPad, or do you want ball or blocks? So you could use, 2 items. They're able to be motivated in their choices and able to say, maybe I want blocks. So they just made their choice. You know exactly what they want, and you help them giving those binary choices. And also make high probability requests. So these are requests that are motivating to the student and that they will obviously likely respond to. You're not going to use something that really they couldn't care less about. And just a key takeaway from this, remember that AAC systems should be present at all times. This is huge. I've walked in many places where it's the student, the AAC device is not present at all times. Yes, there are some, instances where, they may not have it for a few minutes or transitioning between an activity, like if they're walking somewhere quickly and then come back quickly. However, if it's able, they make a lot of different ways that AAC devices, even the tablets, can be worn around children's neck. Now they make necklaces, like Velcro straps. They have like a backpack. There's ways to carry things. Binders are a little bit more difficult. However, an aide or a teacher can have that with them if they go outside to recess. Provide the student with that communication board so that they have that visual and they have their voice. That is their voice. Make sure that this is consistently organized. Sometimes those pictures, if they're Velcro, they just get placed on all these random pages. And if the student is used to going, if it's labeled snack, or there's a picture of food, or if there's, art, if it has a crayons on that page, and then there's pictures of pretzels on there, well, that doesn't go together. So that's not consistently organized, and the student is going to become frustrated because they cannot find their voice, literally what they need to say. Make sure this is continuously modeled. Again, there's the huge thing. And this is always recognized as the user's voice, and make sure that that AAC is usable across a variety of contexts and settings. So again, I gave all of those different examples as to how when you're talking about in a school setting, that the different activities and routines and daily, and throughout their daily curriculum, that AAC can be used. And here are some references as to where the information came from. Does anybody have any questions?